All right, today we're going to do the new build or new construction training remake. There's some things that we added in there that talks especially about um, new construction through like the promulgated forms, using those. I think our previous training, we mostly focused on just the high volume builders, but we're going to, dive into a little bit more of the custom home builders and smaller builders that you might run into. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So um, there's different builders, and each builder may have a different process, right? So some of them, builder or new construction home like company, there's different options that are out there. There's the traditional high volume builders like Pulte, Lennar, Meritage. I mean, there's tons of them out there, but these are, what you see the signs on the side of the road, homes starting in the 300 plus range kind of stuff. And then you've got like custom home builders. Now there's the bigger firms that are closer to a higher volume builder, like a First Texas Home, um, and there's plenty of those, and they give you options to customize your floor plan. And we'll go more into details about those types of builders. But they definitely give you a lot more options to be able to customize the home the way that you want. And then there's fully custom homes where you select the floor plan, the finishes, the builder. They may help you out with lot acquisition or, the entitlements and even funding for construction sometimes. So lots of different ways to get a home built. And then the main thing that you guys need to be aware of, and the reason why it's important, is because we actually got sued for this in 2025. An agent sold a home that was custom built utilizing a floor plan that was copyrighted by another design company. And so it's important that check. So you make sure that the builder has the rights to those floor plans. If you are utilizing a custom home and you see a floor plan on Facebook that you really like, and you give that to your custom home builder, say, I want you to build this home, um, you could be potentially doing some copyright infringement because that could be intellectual property. So these floor plans often cost very low amounts. I mean, we're talking about $1,000, $1,500 for a floor plan, the rights to a floor plan to be able to use it. So pay that. If your clients find something that they're interested in, or you find something that you're wanting to, build for yourself or something like that, pay the extra bit of money for a floor plan that you have the rights to be able to use. Otherwise, you take the floor plan and you need to sit down with a drawing software and change it enough to where it can't be mistakenly, you know, considered a different floor plan that's already been posted. So the reason why that is incredibly important is because of the multipliers that go into play here. You could get damages, or the brokerage or the client, or I mean, everybody gets sued. Everybody gets named in the lawsuit, and the damages could reach upwards of $150,000 per instance. So just make sure that the drawings, architectural designs, floor plans, all this stuff is either individually sourced, or you've they've acquired the rights to those plans. Um, Most high volume builders will use their own contracts. The reason why this is important to note is that there's a buyer contract and then there's a seller contract. And what I mean by that is provisions within the contract are designed to protect that particular party. So a buyer contract is designed to protect the buyer. It's a buyer beware contract. Trek promulgated contracts are buyer beware contracts. They are designed to protect the buyer. As a matter of fact, there's only one clause, there's only one reason that a seller can terminate a contract, and that's if the buyer doesn't uh, deliver the earnest money within the first 3 days, then the seller is allowed to terminate until the buyer delivers the earnest money. Once they delivered the earnest money, it's it. The seller can no longer terminate. It doesn't matter if it was on day 5, day 10, whatever. If the seller didn't terminate within that period, they don't get to terminate anymore. The options off the table. So that's what I mean by a buyer contract. Then you have builder custom contracts. Oftentimes, the bigger, higher volume builders, or someone who's obviously done more development and have run into more lawsuits and issues and wanted reasons to be able to get out of a contract, they've gone off, they've hired an attorney, and they've developed their own contract. And you'll find that there's a lot of provisions that are in there that allow the seller to be able to terminate with cause. So I wouldn't say it's a full-blown seller contract, because there's still provisions within the contract that allow the buyer to be able to terminate. For instance, if they don't get approved for the loan, then the buyer can terminate, these kinds of things. But what the seller has added in there is they say if they weren't able to get approved within a very tight period, then the earnest money is no longer refundable. I mean, they're very clear about capturing the earnest money and the terms that they can be able to. So they confine those buyer clauses more, and they add clauses for the seller to be able to terminate. So that's something you need to consider whenever there is a builder contract or a custom contract that's being put into play. Now, it's important to note that you, as an agent, are not a lawyer. I'm assuming this because I've only hired, I think, 1 or 2 lawyers to date. So, most of you are not attorneys. If there is a contract that's presented and it's not a promulgated contract, even if, to be honest, if it's promulgated contract, we're still not attorneys. We can't explain contracts to people. You can't sit down and go through the contract and say, this is what this section means. This is what this section means to your clients, because that's considered practicing law without a license. And you can get into serious trouble with TREC about that. So whenever there is a contract that's presented, always encourage your client. If there's any questions you have about the contract, please get legal advice. Go talk to an attorney. If they don't know any attorneys or they don't have any, it doesn't hurt to contact, say, the title company and ask them if they have any attorney references. Title offices are usually also law firms. They usually have attorneys there on site that you can ask questions to. So if there is a situation where the client has some questions about a certain provision in the contract, they can go up to the title office and talk to the on-site attorney, and get their questions answered that way. You aren't putting yourself in a liable position along with the brokerage. Okay. Next, full custom builders or smaller builders that use TREC forms. It's okay that they do this. There's several like new contracts that have all been revamped. Actually, there's one on here that's a builder contract. I need to add that to the list. But you've got new home incomplete, meaning it's still under construction, new home complete, and then new condominium and the complete and incomplete for those as well. And then there's a promulgated builder contract that has been put out there as well that is a little bit more seller leaning. Some important notes to take about these. They may have an addendum that they add to the standard contract. Maybe the provisions are a little too buyer protective, and a builder, or the contractor, may want additional protection. So they may have like a seller addendum that they add to the contract. This is something that, again, is just like a custom contract. It may override some of the clauses that are in the contract. So the client should speak with an attorney if they have any questions about the provisions within that addendum. Another important note is that the 1 to 4 resale is for pre-existing homes, not new constructions. Will title let that go through? Sure, they will, but is designed for a home that's already there. For instance, it has a seller's disclosure section. You don't need a seller's disclosure section on a new construction home. The section that talks about the condition of the home in the uh, new home contracts talks about, our values of insulation and repair and different things that address the conditions of the home and the warranties that are involved. Resale talks about the condition of the home based on the seller's perspective. And so what has happened to the home? These are, two very different contracts, and they are not to be used interchangeably. New home contracts should be used for new home sales, and resale should be used for a home that's being resold. So this may sound self-explanatory, but I've actually had a few agents over the last year who have done this, and it's kind of worrisome. So just make sure that you're aware of the contracts that are out there and the proper contracts are being used. New home contracts have sections for the builder to complete. Do not complete them for the builder. I know that as a buyer, it's your job to prepare the contract. That doesn't mean that you go down and check all the boxes for the seller's side. You should let the builder fill those out. If they don't fill them out, send it back to them and have them complete that information, because that's information that your client should get. Also, get warranty information in writing. A lot of times, new construction will have a certain, like a 125, 2510 type warranty. And what I mean by that is the first number is usually your mechanical warranty. So it covers plumbing, um, the like electrical, the HVAC, that kind of stuff. Anything that breaks within it that came with the home, they will come and fix it. Uh, Actually, the first year is actually bumper to bumper. They'll fix anything. The next one, the middle number, is the mechanical warranty that covers just like any particular issues with the mechanics of the home. And then after that, you have the structural. So the structural covers like foundation, brick and facade, and roofing, that kind of stuff. So if there's any of those types of issues, that's usually the bigger number, anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And if they have any issues, then they'll still warranty that. And there's some like smaller builders that don't necessarily warranty it themselves. They may employ a warranty service to manage the warranty after they sell the home. So, you want to have all of these details in writing to be able to provide it to your client. And this needs to happen before the contract is signed, because once it's signed, it's done. So if this builder is a really small time, this is his first home and doesn't really know what he's doing, and he forgets to get set up with a warranty, and you go off and you sell this home without any of that stuff in writing, there's no telling what you can get on the back end of it. And your clients could be in a very bad position. So just make sure that you have all the warranty information in writing prior to the contract being fully executed. All right, so now we're going to talk about high volume builders. We don't need this. Some key concepts here before we get into that. Number one, you don't necessarily need to be a realtor to buy one of these high volume homes. They're very much set up like, you know, a, a store. You just walk in and pick out what you want, and they put the document in front of you, you sign it, give them the money, and that's it. And you don't necessarily need to know anything about the house or construction to be able to have a home built. Should you? Yes, because they the builders often cut a lot of corners, and we'll talk about those here in a little bit. But the um, the average Joe that buys a house does not have a realtor whenever it comes to new home purchases. Most of them don't list a realtor. So you need to realize that going into this as a realtor, that your job is not absolutely necessary in this position. So what can you do? You can bring value to the deal by knowing these things, by being able to save them money and help with the development of the home, being an extra set of eyes that they may not, and see things that they may not see. Being a professional in the industry, seeing a lot of homes, knowing what things should look like will help you. You don't necessarily need to have been doing construction for 20 years to be good at walking a home and pointing out defects. But having the experience of having walked hundreds or even thousands of homes and seeing what looks good and what doesn't does stand out and help whenever the time comes. So, add value where you can. And the builder will at times encourage the clients not to use you. The reason why is because obviously they don't want to pay you a commission. So they may encourage the clients that they can get a bigger bonus, or they can, get some added improvements or something like that if they don't have a realtor. So when possible, try to go with your clients to the new build, the very first appointment, so that whenever they get registered with you there, and there's no confusion on your clients. If you're just sending people out looking and interviewing with new builders, there's a decent chance that you could end up getting cut out of the deal. All right. So incentives available, usually with strings attached. Um, what I mean by that is, like, they may offer a $10,000 improvement allowance, or even more. I mean, we're just going to throw out 10,000 because that's what I've heard more times than not. This improvement allowance, though, is there, or another one is help with closing costs. Your no closing costs is what they'll advertise, or something like that. But the string that they attached are, you have to use their lender and you have to use their title company. And there's a reason why that is. Like Lennar has Lennar title, Pulte has Pulte title. They all have their own title companies. They have their own mortgage companies or lender that sell mortgages, and they make money on all those aspects of the deal. Where this can be a problem is that if your clients go into it not knowing, you could be paying much higher title fees, much higher lender origination fees for these loans, and they're benefiting more on the back end. So they may be saving, 10,000 in closing costs, but paying well more than $10,000 in other fees from utilizing their other services. So that's why you want to, always get these details in writing. Number two, if they have a title company that they're requiring, this is important to note. Usually you can request a fee schedule ahead of time. Say, if we're going to use your title company, can we please get the fee schedule for your title firm? And they'll send it to you, because they should have that posted. It's required by law. And those fees that are on there, where you'll see some variables, is processing fees. Now, certain title fees are fixed by the state, but there are other, like, lawyer fees and document fees and other things that they are variable, and they can change a great deal. And so just having that fee schedule is good to have, because if you, for instance, work with, say, Republic Title of Texas, or First American Title. Both of those usually have very competitive fees, and you can get a fee schedule from one of them. And then you can go back to the builder's title company and say, well, this is the title company we were going to use, and these are the fees that they charge. And it'll save my client like $2,000 by itself just on the fees if we use them. Not to mention the title insurance is probably going to be cheaper too. So, whenever you present it like that, a lot of times that builder title company will change, they'll adjust their fees. They'll say, okay, well, we can match these fees right here, and just so you can use our title company, because they do track this stuff. It's important to them. They want to keep your business, and those rates are negotiable. All important things to take note of. Same with the lender. So the loan origination fee and the rates are very important here, especially buy down rates. What your client may go out and get approved for through a independent loan officer, say they get approved for a 4.75 rate, right? And they are ready to do this, and the loan origination is only $500, but then you go and you use the builder's lender because you want this $10,000 thing, and they say, okay, great, well, what do you want your payment to be? We can make that happen, and then you take a look at the details, and what it shows is they actually got them approved at a 6.0 rate, but then there's a buy down of $25,000 to bring it down to the 4.75. Or the loan origination fee is actually 1% of the loan. So it ends up being, $3,500 to do the loan. But they build all of that into the loan itself because they're playing with the numbers. So your client ends up paying, because they're not paying any closing costs, they're building it into the loan, and that $3,500 loan origination fee over the course of the loan ends up being $10,000. So the, you know, these are the details that you want to, be aware of, make your client aware of, because you're saving them money. Their ignorance can cost them a lot of money here. And if you can do a side by side comparison, have a loan origination, a lender in your Rolodex, have two or three of them, as a matter of fact, that you work with. You may have one that you really, you know, get a lot of business done through. Those are the ones you want to have on call, because a lot of them, they have no problems putting together a pre-qual quick, because they know that you're bringing them business. So have them draw up a prequal before you go and visit any home builders, because that prequal letter could help, you know, wrangle in the lenders that the builder's trying to use. And if they aren't able to match those rates, like perfectly matched, or at least very close, then your client should be made aware, okay, you're actually spending more by using their lender than using this lender and saving the money. You by getting that $10,000 bonus, you actually pay more because of you're using the lender overall. So these are just important things to note and educate your client whenever you're doing. Okay, so the different types of high volume builders, spec homes, it's a very common term. What that means is they've already specced out, meaning they've already picked all the selections for the home. They've already submitted the plans to the city. They've already been approved. These homes are either in the middle of construction or almost done. There are some changes that you can do occasionally. Say the home is a month out from being done, maybe you can change the paint color in a couple of rooms, or maybe you can change the countertops or the tile if they haven't put. See, these are surface level stuff and often not a part of the building process. What you can't change is where a bathroom is or where a sink is located. You can't add more sinks or add more faucets or add, another bathroom, anything like that, because any type of changes to the mechanics of the home have to be submitted and approved by the city. And then they have to be inspected and approved through the construction. Like the plumber, they can't put on the drywall until the plumbing inspection has gotten a green tag. And that means that the inspector comes out and looks at all the lines and their placement and how they're installed and their connections and everything. Same with electrical. Before they can start the finish out, they have to get these approved by the city. And before that, they have to submit these architectural plans to the city for them to be approved, to show where the electrical is going to be, where the plumbing is going to be, all of that stuff. All is overseen and approved by the city. So with spec homes, a lot less flexibility. And there are even some builders who say, we've already bought the supplies, we've already bought the paint, all the finishes. The only thing you can do is agree to buy this home or buy another home because there's no changes to it. That's typically like what Lennar does. And the reason why Lennar is so much more affordable is because they buy, you know, a warehouse full of the exact same flooring and they use that same flooring for an entire subdivision. Same with the windows, the fans, the doors, the cabinets, the countertops, all of it is more or less the same because they bought it in bulk and they're using it on all of them. And they'll use the same contractors to install all of it as well. And so with spec homes, you can save considerable money, especially if they're already completed. They're costing that builder money. They have to pay taxes on those homes every month that they're there. And so that's more cost on that build to the degree that they could be losing money. Now, the average home builder makes a good like 20 to 30%, if not more in some cases, on the construction of a home. So they have a lot of room to play with. And that's why you may see a home that is listed at 399, but it's already finished construction, but they're willing to sell it for 320 just to get it off their books. They're willing to take an $80,000 pay cut on that house just so it doesn't keep costing them money. They just want to get the money out of that house that they've invested and move on to the next deal, hoping that they can make more money on that one. So they won't necessarily take a loss. I'm sure they do take losses on some homes from time to time, but overall, the margin is there to where they could take a huge drop in price and be able to sell it and still come out ahead. So heavily discounted, um, if it's already there or almost done, and they'll usually have 10 of them all under construction at the same time. Like if you go to a Lennar community, you drive around, you'll see there's like, 5 foundations being poured and 5 houses that are in framing. There's 5 houses that have sheathing on the outside. Then there's, 10 more that are already have the facade on them and they're about to get landscaping and flat work done. I mean, you'll see all the different stages of the construction because it's more or less a a process that they run it through. It's just this assembly line of business that they just have pumping out houses. And once it's done, they got to get it sold. It's got to be sold ASAP because they're trying to continue building the next home. Um, all right. Usually they're available quicker, takes anywhere from 4 to 6 months to have a spec home built nowadays. Super fast. All right. So brand new homes, these are from like scratch. Like a Pulte home, you can go in there, pick out a floor plan, pick out the lot. Um, and what's funny is there's almost everybody has lot premiums now to where you could be across the street from a big tree. and you have a lot premium because of the view. You could you could be across the street from a creek, and that's considered a lot premium because of the view. If there's a water retention pond, you know, behind your next door neighbor's house, that could be a water view, a lot premium added to that. So you'll see lots of those. There's also much higher costs on the construction because you're paying for basically retail costs of all the improvements. Now, the clients get to pick what they want, usually out of a selection. There's the semi-custom where they'll say, okay, these are your flooring options. There's, 8 or 9 hard plank flooring options. There's 2 or 3 tile, and there's even some carpet options. Um, they'll allow them to pick out of those selections and pick what paint, what cabinets, what countertops, all that stuff out of a set selection, a group. And then you have the fully custom. These are the builders again where you go and you find a lot, you find a builder, maybe the builder has a handful of lots that they have on inventory that they can sell you. Um, and then you pick out a floor plan. If they have some floor plans, you could pick some of theirs, but you could bring a floor plan that you have and then get the architectural drawings put together for it and then have it fully developed exactly how you want it. But you're paying a premium for all of this stuff, for lots, for the materials, for the construction, and it's often, $200 plus per square foot to have a brand new home built. No discounts. There's not any discounts available on having a new home completely built. Sale of another property. Okay, so the reason why this is important is because you really need to check the contract for the rules on selling a home, especially if you're working with a high volume builder. Maybe it takes a year for the home to be constructed, but the contract may stipulate that they require your client to put the house on the market immediately or within the next 30 to 60 days. Um, what are your clients going to do if the house sells in the meantime? These are questions that you have to ask and get clarity on. I did a build where it was going to take a year and a half and they still required the clients to put their house on the market. And so what they ended up doing is putting the house for lease. And they were able to get approved by doing it that way. So there's different ways to finagle these requirements as long as it's not considered a requirement on the purchase of this home. But if your clients need the equity from the home that they're living in to buy this brand new home, the builder may require that home be sold and that money be sitting there waiting for the purchase of the new home. So just get clarity on that, educate your client, make sure that they understand the terms of these things because it could be a scramble and it could be a difficult thing to deal with if they're, in between. They get that house sold and then they still got 9 months before the house is ready. All right, so timeline. This is like the timeline of having a new home built. Typically, early on, you have the signing where you pay the earnest money, you schedule design sessions, you pick everything out, all the finishes and everything. It may take 2, 3 sessions to get everything done. It may take only one. It just depends on the builder and what kind of finishes and what kind of things that your client are doing. And then there's typically like a red line date. And what that means is there cannot be any more changes to the home after this particular date. And that's because one, plans are submitted to the city for approval. Supplies are already purchased. That at the beginning they may have to put down like a significant amount of money in order to hold or pay for supplies, depending if it's a fully custom builder. They may require a 20% down um, in a construction loan to boot, it to be involved. So it just depends on where you're at. But that red line date is because there's a point of no return, essentially, things that cost money if you decide to change. So after red line date, if your spouse wants a bathroom added to this side of this side of the house where there's a guest room, we want them to have an ensuite instead, and there's room over there, we decided to go ahead and add that. Well, if it's after the red line date, then that means that new plans need to be drawn up, new electrical, new plumbing, new lighting, new floor plan. All of these things have to be redrawn according to the CAD that they use. And then they have to be submitted to the city. They have to pay for each one of those to be submitted and approved by the city because the city has fees, right? And so those costs start to balloon, right? Because not only are you having to pay for more plans to be submitted, but you're also having to pay for the improvements that are there. Well, I mean, your client. So the important thing to note is that tell your clients like, hey, this red line date, we need to have, you need to be 100% certain that this is the home because the builder most likely is going to have you sign that there will not be any more changes. Um, and if there are, there's going to be some pretty heavy fees that come along with it. All right, so construction begins. There's some changes that are okay to be made, like paint color, flooring changes, maybe if they haven't already ordered them. Just depends on the builder and who you're using and what they're doing, but it's only on the finish out, not on anything that's structural or mechanical. Um, Punch list. So construction's almost done, you're nearing the end. I would encourage the clients to go take a look at the construction of the home. Stop in. If anything looks funny, take a picture, send it to me or send it to a buddy who knows construction and ask them, say, hey, is this supposed to be like this? This doesn't look quite right. If anything looks out of place, then do it. What I've learned is that, especially with high volume builders, is these contractors, they basically get paid by the house. They don't get paid for the quality of the work necessarily. They get paid for the volume that they get done. So you may go in and see some pretty messed up stuff, crooked walls, boards that should not have been used have been used. Um, Things that look real janky. And if you aren't there during the construction or your client's not there during the construction, they may not have any idea what's behind those walls and what, shortcuts were taken. So all important notes to, be made aware of and to share with your client. These things could save them money and also they show your value as an agent, right? And then you've got the punch list. So most builders, anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks prior to the closing date, they'll say, okay, you're allowed to have a third party inspector, but it needs to be done by 3 weeks prior to closing. The reason why they do that is because these third party inspectors usually find a good bit of stuff. And the builder wants to have enough time to be able to make those repairs. Your average walkthrough or blue tape day might be 1 or 2 weeks out of closing, where you're basically marking where paint spots that have been missed or, drips on the floor or places where the texture on the walls is off, or I've even seen curves in walls. So Lennar, they will allow curves and curvy walls. They, to a degree, and it usually is like a half inch over 3 feet or something like that. So if you have a 4 foot wall and there's a bend in it that's the equivalent of about 2 inches, they really need to come in and either add more to the sides that are lower, or they need to tear out the drywall, redo the studs, and then re-drywall it. So it is a bigger project, but I have had them do that before because I've seen some pretty messed up walls in my time. So the inspector going, sorry to, I need to finish on the inspector. So the reason why the inspection is so important is because even though it's a brand new home, the builders again may be cutting corners, or maybe they're not aware of any code changes that have happened in the last year. There's no telling, but inspectors, it's their job to find stuff, and they always do. I've never once in my 20 years of doing real estate, I've never had a inspector come back and say, nope, she's good, nothing wrong with her. Never, not once. So always pay for a third party inspection. Have your clients pay for a third party inspection. Builders will say, oh, we already have our own third party inspection. Do you know what their third party inspection is? They've got, you know, their secretary at the office calling the plumber. Hey, did you guys finish and get a green tag? Yep. Okay, good. Inspection done. Pick up the phone, call the electrical. Hey, did y'all get a green tag on your electrical work that you did on this address? Yep. Okay, done. Check that box. Third party inspection done. That's it. They don't actually go out and test all the plugs, test all the faucets, test the hot and the cold, test the drains. They don't do any of that stuff. They don't look underneath to see if there's any dripping or anything like that. So an inspector will test all of that stuff, and they will say when something is missing. And that is just good for your clients to know before the home is done that it's going to be repaired and taken care of, and that their home is fully done. That is the one situation where you can take the inspection report, provide it to the seller, and the seller has to fix everything that's on it. All right. So final walkthrough. That's usually day before, 2 days before closing. The clients go there just to make sure that everything that was, listed on Blue Tape Day, everything that was listed on the inspection has all been repaired and done. I will tell you that I like to, on Blue Tape Day, go a little early. I'm kind of an early bird kind of guy. So if I have a 1 o'clock walkthrough, I'll show up at 12:30. They almost always leave these houses unlocked, almost always. So I'll get there a little early. I'll walk the outside first, and I'll bring my own roll of tape, and I'll start marking things, and I'll go through because I know what, I see things. And then that way, whenever the builder gets there with the client, the builder's going through all the warranty information and talking to them this whole time, right? So the client is basically being distracted by the builder while they're supposed to be doing a walkthrough through the house. And maybe they do a walkthrough, but the builder's moving them through it pretty quick. I can go through it with a fine tooth comb and pick out everything that's wrong. And let me tell you, it's always funny to see the builder's eyes whenever they walk in and they see all the blue tape all over the walls before the walkthrough has even begun. So, another great opportunity for you to be able to prove your value to your clients. After that sale is done and all those things were fixed, the builder may not like you much, but your clients, after that, whenever they're driving home, they're like, man, I'm so glad I hired Brian to do this. This was great because he found so much stuff, and all that's going to be fixed before we even move into this house. So, anyways, lots of good places where you can add value to the home, especially like with title, lender, walkthroughs, that kind of stuff. All right, so that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll go ahead and open it up to Johannes. You have any questions?
Yeah, one questions. You mentioned about the high volume builder who has their own contract.
Hmm.
Uh, can we, as an agent, try to advise the client, uh, try to help the client interpret the sentences,
Like
or
to
we can
edit
just
the contract? Is that what you're saying?
not edit, just this is what it means to
Oh,
the contracts,
no.
something like that.
Well, so here are the areas that you can advise them. Where
Okay,
it says square foot, you can say how much the square foot's in there. Where,
sure.
where it says the price, you can say how much the home is listed for. Like if there's any language in there, you really, so this section talks about title insurance. Do you guys, if you guys have any questions about the clauses that are in the contract, you really should seek an attorney because I'm not
Okay,
allowed to give any legal advice. This is what I typically do. Whenever I get one of these contracts, I send it to my client. I say, look, if you have any questions about the contract, I'll try to answer what I can, but I'm not an attorney. I would recommend you get an attorney to review the contract with you if there's anything about the language that's in it. And that usually fixes it. I mean, unfortunately, most people, they just sign it. They don't even read it.
yeah,
It's very rare for me to sit there for an hour while someone's reading the builder contract.
that's
Uh, I don't
yeah,
think it's
that's
ever happened actually.
yeah, I that's true.
Yeah. So people, and that's honestly why they have buyer beware contracts. That's why they do all of this stuff because buyers they just sign and they just go
Hmm.
leap without, considering. And so they
I
just
think
trust.
I think the last
Yeah,
one I did was like 73 pages long.
Yeah. And they
yeah,
do that on purpose. They're hiding the trees in the forest, essentially. There's some clauses in there that are, definitely leaning towards the seller and protecting them, but they don't want to point them out. So they add a whole bunch of jargon for all of it. And it's all in legalese and very hard to understand and all of that stuff. So, anytime you get a big stack of a contract, you just tell them, hey, it may cost you $50 to go on to LegalZoom and have somebody review this contract with you. So yeah, I would recommend, getting an attorney because I'm not one.
okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, that's it. Thank you. And you have a great day.
Thank you, Brian.